I'm right there. All right. Go ahead and get this started. Sorry, we're a little late, but due to technical difficulties. We were postponed for a few minutes, so we're ready to go. Is all right, are you?
Well, welcome to the budget workshop for fiscal year 2026. When building the budget, I wrote with Mr. Gilbert, we basically did some estimations on what we think is going to happen next year. So enrollment is budgeted at 3,550. And that is the same as the budget for the year we're currently in, and our current enrollment right now is 3,568. Support units are budgeted at 164. Impact aid budgeted without civilians. No emergency levy budgeted. 7% increase for healthcare. That is for the medical side, the medical health insurance. And then utilities have increased across the board. Building supplies will be reduced as enrollment has increased. And then all staff were given the step and a 2% increase on the salary schedule. Next slide is the financials. The financials are sent out each month and are broken down into two sections. The first section is the balance sheet. On the balance sheet is the assets, that is cash in the bank, investment in the state pool, receivables district will get up to 60 days after year end, inventory, prepaid expenses, our insurance premiums that we pay at the beginning of the year. The next section on the balance sheet is the liabilities. That consists of vendor invoices that are unpaid, salaries payable, taxes payable, benefits payable, and tax revenue the district will receive by August 31st. The bottom of the balance sheet shows the fund balance if we were to close doors on March 31st, as that is when that financial statement is done. The second half of the financial is going to be the income statement. First section of that is revenues. That shows revenues from all sources. The second half is going to be the expenses. That will show all expenses from all categories. And the bottom of the income statement shows our financial position. Next slide will be operations. The district staffs employees based on enrollment. The district gets funded based on average daily attendance, also known as ADA. You'll hear ADA quite a bit during this presentation. When children are absent, staffing needs to remain the same. ADA is the most important during the first reporting period, which ends early November. Next slide will be the support unit calculations. The State Department of Education gives support units based on average daily attendance. There are different attendance divisors based on grade level. Public school support unit tables on the right. This breaks out the state guidelines. The spreadsheet on the top left is an example of how support units are calculated. And this is one I basically just kind of put together, just kind of give an example of how the ADA and the attendance divisor equal the support units. ADA divided by the attendance divisor equals the support units. And then the table on the bottom left is the allowable staffing for each support unit the district gets. So it's 0.075 administration, 1.021 instructional, 0.079 pupil service, and 0.375 non-certified.
Somebody's part.
Next slide will be the average daily attendance comparison. So I made two comparisons of enrollment in ADA. The left is the FY19, so this is going to be before COVID, kind of when our enrollment was at the highest it's been in a while. Be that versus the FY25, and the right is FY24 versus FY25. So both show a decrease in average daily attendance. And that affects our support units and our funding.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
For a kid to count for a full day, how much of that day do they have to be in the seat? Is it all 8 hours or is it 6 hours?
I think they tell about 1 o'clock.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, because our early release days, those count as a full day. Okay, next slide will be the salary-based apportionment. So one of the things we get is our entitlement. This is the district's base support. FY 25, we got $43,622. FY 26, the entitlement is going to $45,373. That is an increase of 4.01% over FY 25. Of the $45,373, $21,901 is designated to healthcare benefits. And this does not cover the healthcare costs for the employee portions. Next section is administration. The administration-based support is changing this year. Last year was $44,446, and it is increasing to $46,668. This is an increase of 5%. The classified base support is changing as well. Last year was $39,966, and it is increasing to $41,964. That is also an increase of 5%. And then the certified base support is on the table on the right. All cells RP1 through AP5 have increased. The average increase is 5% as well. I just want to make note that the administration classified certified, yes, it is going up 5%, but that does not equate to actual 5% of what our salaries and benefits are. So there's you'll see in a few slides coming up, there's a very big gap between what we get reimbursed compared to what we pay for salary and benefits. So next slide is going to be the foundation payment. The foundation payment sheet is on the right. This breaks out all of the state funding in basically the first half of the page. So we get 5 payments throughout the year. Those payments fluctuate based on the ADA. We get a payment in November. Get payment in August, November, February, May, and then the final one in July. On that first half right there, there's a line item for transportation, and that is paid out in February for the previous school year. The second half, or starting on line 18, those are going to be the special distribution payments. It is other support known as the special distributions, and then these funds have specific uses based on Idaho code, and those are all restricted to those purposes. Next slide will be the apportionment. So this page is, in years past, I basically have taken the entire page and kind of put it on a sheet right here, and it's been really hard for you guys to see. So instead of turning it sideways, basically what I did is I just took screenshots of information that'd be useful for you guys. So the first section shows the allowable full-time employees, so that will be column F. So if you look, I'll use my laser pointer right here. So this is going to be column F right here. You kind of see on your guys' thing has left A through G. So that is what we get reimbursed from the State Department for. And then column G, the next column over, that is what our actual full-time employees are. So right now, our certified staff are 12.63 over the allowance. So that means we are overstaffed compared to what we get reimbursed for. Classified are 25.30 over allowance, and then administration is 0.82 over allowance. The second section is what the State Department pays for salaries. So if you look at my pointer right here, it's going to be basically these 2 columns right here. The column N is what they pay, column O is what our actual salaries are. So the district pays $4,416,237 above the allowable amount. Plus $909,892 for FICA and FIRST. And then the district amount will increase when the sport units drop. Which is why the number has increased. I based the math of what it was last year compared to this year, and the district's paying $1.4 million over what we were last year. Next slide is going to be impact aid. So impact aid is funded by students with military connections. This includes students whose parents work on non-military property. A students have parents with military connections that are living on base. B students have parents with military connections living off base. And then C students have parents working on federal property and then living in town. I don't anticipate any funding for C students. We haven't had those in a very long time. I'm not even sure the last time it was. We haven't had it since I've been here. I budgeted $1,250,000 based off of what we've gotten this year and based it off of the for student count for impact aid day, in October. And then we don't know when the payments are gonna come in. They kind of just come in and whatever. So far this year, we've got 90% of our payments for this year, but there's still that 10% that's out there.
So with the impact data, I know there's been a lot of talk about the cuts to the budget for what's going to be left of the Department of Ed. And they're just kind of like, a whole lot of our money being cut. We anticipate more than $45,000 coming off of impact data. Or you heard how much they're gonna cut. I know that with the CR, they've cut its current spending minus 15% from what they had for 2024 for the rest of this year. Have you heard anything on projections for next year yet?
I have not.
Okay.
All right, next slide is going to be the certified salary schedule. So 80% of the district budget is made up of salaries and benefits. The table on the left shows the certified salary for FY25. It is based on the career ladder the State Department of Education has implemented in prior years. And then the table on the right shows where the staff are placed on the career ladder. Next slide will be the benefits. So there will be a 7% increase for the healthcare benefits, as what was agreed upon when we originally signed with the St. Luke's Health Plan. First, we have updated its rates. It did not change this year. There's been changes the last few years. It did not change this year. So certified staff are 13.48%, and then classified are 11.96%. So the district must pay 21.13% for certified and 19.61% for classified for the district portion of FICA and FIRST above the allowable salaries. And then there were some changes with the FIRST sick leave retirement. There is no sick leave retirement due at this time. By the sounds of it, we'll start paying again in July of 2026. Next slide is the purchase services. So purchase services, what I do is I compare the FY24 actuals. Then I run the report and do what we have for the year to date. And generally, I do these around, when I start the budget around February, March timeframe. So I'll take whatever month it is, I'll divide what we have year to date by the number of months, and I'll times it by 12. That gives me what I estimate we're gonna have for the total year. And then I compare that to what we have for the FY25 budget, and this leads me to the FY26 budget numbers. So the repairs category is going to be maintenance to building and equipment. Contracted services is going to be services performed by outside agencies. Other is professional technical services, like our shredding services. Therapy services are for the special needs students. Utility is gonna be power, water, sewer, trash, gas. And then travel is going to be mileage, extracurricular activities, athletic competitions, and lieu of transportation. The next slide will be the supplies. And the same thing with supplies as I did with the purchase services, compare 24 actuals to 25-year date, annualized it. It'd be what we had for the 25 budget, 11-year 26 budget. Maintenance is going to be supplies used to maintain the buildings and equipment. Fuel is going to be fuel for student transportation and district vehicles. Building supplies are supplies associated with each location, including student supplies. Copier supplies are going to be supplies associated with the copiers, things like paper. Textbooks / licenses is going to be curriculum, licenses for technology. And then others going to be the safety, what we spend on the mini buses to high school, and then miscellaneous supplies around the district to operate it. Next slide will be the capital. Capital budget is the same as last year at $260,000. The maintenance budget is going to be $70,000, anticipating some newer vehicles, newer equipment, mowers, that type of thing. The budget for the district is going to be $150,000. We do have a bus that's on order right now. I believe it's going to be done around August. That was approved by the board a while back. The goal is to replace the existing high mileage white buses. That way we can use those instead of having to contract through public transportation. Basically to save us some money on that. Being how the athletics is not reimbursed by the State Department. And then $40,000 in capital for athletics. There's multiple areas around the district that can be approved for that. Next slide is going to be the other slide. This is our, the majority of it is insurance. This covers the property insurance, liability for the district and for the staff, a supplemental insurance for athletics. This allows us to participate in athletic events. And then if we ever have any claims with our insurance, things like vandalism, damage, and lawsuits, we have a $5,000 deductible we have to pay for that. The next slide will be the transfers. So every year every month I transfer money over to pay for FICA and PERSI for our food service staff. It's basically a federal law that requires us to, those items cannot be paid for that out of the food service fund. So then this right here will be the proposed FY26 budget. It will show a total revenue of $32,897,189. Total expenses is $34,683,004. With a revenue under expenditures of $1,785,815. Any questions?
Yeah, if it's in parentheses, that means we're under it. Assuming this is real,
What's that?
assuming that this came real and this was actual, that 1.7 would be covered up.
Fund balance. So we do have fund balance. We generally like to have 3 months worth of expenditures, which is around $10 million. It's $10,800,000. That's basically guidance that the auditors have recommended that we have. So we have basically that $10 million right there, and then we're also looking at, the basically 20% for the Stevenson project, so.
And that's like $6.6 million like $29.
Yep.
So is this 1.7 still with the left with the supplemental levy?
Yep,
When we're done with that question.
we have for one more year. That for next year. But I believe we're gonna run that, we'll run that in November. If it doesn't pass November, then we have opportunity to run again in May.
That would be for fiscal year 27, right?
Yes. 27, 28.
27. Okay, I'm kind of new to this, so I'm gonna ask a question. Okay, so.
Well,
teacher-
excuse me, before you do that, the board has,
I-
yeah, the board has to allow you to, because there's no public input.
Okay,
So if you would just ask the board if you ask questions. You just need them to repeat to it.
there won't be any name. I just wanted to ask a question about salary increase.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so the teachers are gonna get 2% plus their next year. But administration and certified or classified are getting 5%? No.
No, it's 2% across the board. That was on the assumption page.
First thing, yeah, I saw that.
This is all.
I saw that. Then I also saw where.
You might have saw where it talks about the funding. So the state increased the funding by 5%.
The base reimbursement rate for administration increased 5% from,
Yes, so that's
what is that?
basically what we get for each support unit. So for each support unit, we get, and I'll bring the slide back up right here so you can see it. Basically for each support unit, we get, $44,446. And then next year it's going up to $46,668. That's just what we get per support unit. That's not a salaries and benefit thing.
Okay.
So,
So that when the easiest way to look at it is the state, when they increase funding, it's a distribution. It's not a salary increase. It's just how they increase distributions to the district. So when they said 5% this year for all categories, all that means is they're distributing 5% more for classified, certified, and admin. And then obviously certified goes through the negotiations process on that. What we budgeted for is a 2% increase. So when the state says people are getting a 5% increase, all that means is they're distributing 5% more. So that the best way to look at this is on Levi's schedule there. If you look at the certified career ladder change, that's the state's distribution. So where our people fall in that, that's how much money we get for those people. Our actual salary schedules, the best one is to look at the AP5 down there at the maximum dollar amount is $72,827. And then if you look at our actual salary schedule, which is on page 13, our actual pay is $80,549. So what the state distributes does not match what a district's pay. And so to cover that gap that's there, typically districts use are the discretionary funding that we receive from the state. Or in our case, we use our supplemental levy to help offset that. And that goes for all categories that are there.
Could I ask a question? Could you give me the definition or an explanation for support unit?
Sure. So a support unit is what the state considers to be the average support provided to a classroom. And so it's just it's a funding mechanism. So think of it as 1.1 teachers is what they consider a support unit for funding.
Okay, so then the calculation at 164 number that happens to be back up there, thank you.
Yeah.
that is, the number of units, I'll call it teams, 1.1 teachers.
Correct. So then the state, based on the different divisors that are there, so and again, that, how they calculate that varies by grade level that's there, you know, I think thinking behind it when they originally did this. You know, this funding formula is, I believe, 40-some years old now. From the state is that they expected that your younger grades required more support, so the advisor was different, and then as kids get older, there's that advisor change to it with it, so. Yeah, it's just the way the state, in their opinion, equitably distributes funds to all districts, so they take our enrollments by district. And then get the average daily attendance of that enrollment, and then they use those same divisors across the districts to distribute funds to schools.
Why is the ADAs different by level?
You know, again, I think when this was put in place that long ago, that.
So this right here is also, I just put numbers in right here for the ADA,
Okay,
just for an example, just to
Yeah.
show how the support needs
Okay.
are calculated.
so that's not the actual number.
But that divisor, that's really, and so you look at elementary, 1 through 3. I'm sure there was a time they thought that this was like the average class size in the state of Idaho when they did that. So the kindergarten was big, but that's back when kindergarten was running morning and afternoon kindergarten, so that number really was still 1. But then as kids get older, they increase those classroom sizes. It does not pertain to that at all today in Idaho. That's just the formula they've used, and they've tried over the years to change how they distribute the funds, but they've never come to an agreement legislatively on how that formula should work. We do think next year they're probably gonna put in a different funding formula. Our big issue is the attendance portion of this. We staff based on enrollment, not attendance. And so you hire your staff based on the 35-50. And if kids miss X amount of days, that impacts that funding. So the state will only fund us for the actual time that kids are in school. But I think the easy way to look at it is if the student's there, whether they're there 1 day or 180 days, we have to have the staff there to educate the kid. We don't get to adjust staffing throughout the year.
So average daily attendance, I saw there somewhere was 91.
Yeah.
So realistically, we're losing 10%. Because,
Yeah,
those kids aren't showing up to class. We still have to plan that they're gonna be there.
and John, that's kind of a product of pre-COVID. You know, our attendance rates were much higher, like probably 95.
94, it's pulled up right here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So is there any difference in the reason for non-attendance? Or they don't care, it's just whether there's a.
From the state, yeah, from the state end, it does not matter. It's just if a kid's in a seat that day. And so we report out, you know, in our IC program takes student attendance every day. And they average out your average daily attendance over the first 18 weeks of reporting.
Is there ever a time, day or month or week, where you have an actual 100% attendance?
No, I don't think that ever occurs because so you think of enrollment, so when parents are enrolling kids, you know, it's not that they're coming there on the first day of school and enrolling, they're enrolling, you know, the week or 2 weeks prior to that, so we base class lists off of that. And even on day one, you have kids that are absent, whether they're sick or, you know, not back yet from summer break, and so. You know, I wouldn't venture to say what the highest we ever would be, but I would think that 96, 97 might be a really, really good day of attendance that's in there.
Okay, so if that's I mean, it seems like a very logical and real statement to me. So if we were able to calculate, and I assume we are, to figure what that number is, why couldn't we budget based on that number instead of attendance? I mean, instead of enrollment.
So we're budgeting on average daily attendance. So you take we're taking our enrollment, what we expect. And then we're using our average daily attendance from the previous year to calculate that percentage. So what Levi had it on there.
I think I know what you're saying, though. Why not? Why not?
It would change our support unit numbers.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. We're budgeting for, we have to budget for 100%
Yes,
of. Is that a requirement? No, is that a?
it's the reality. You have to, so when we have a kid enroll, by the time you hire all your personnel, we are basing it off of what is our enrollment estimate with it. And so if those kids don't show up on day one, let's say they don't show up the first 10 days of school, we drop them. But the reality of what that looks like is it's not enough kids where you can go, we're gonna go into school and say, I'll just say we're gonna use East's first grade. We anticipated 105 kids across 4 classrooms. So we built and staffed for those 4 classrooms. But only 98 of those kids actually are there. We can't go in and take that 98 and reduce our staffing that we built it based on a full attendance of 105.
Was not enough to reduce it by one
No.
teacher.
No.
One classroom.
You'd have to do it, if you were ever gonna do it, you'd have to do it as a district-wide. Maybe you look at all the first grades and go, now we're going to eliminate 1 first grade district-wide and reassign all of our staff at that point. And so the disruption that causes is pretty tremendous, so.
And then removing students from school.
Yeah,
From school.
and moving the staff, you know, the first, second, third, fourth day after school, and then rebuilding those classes again. And so it's, we don't ever run into a situation where you lose enough kids from enrollment day to actual start day to adjust the staff. What we typically do is our enrollment, we're very conservative on, and so we try to estimate our budget based on what we feel is going to be the minimum number of students that we will have. Because we could go the other way with it too. Instead of saying 3550, we could budget it on 3,700 kids, come out with higher numbers on everything. But we know after you look at this over the last 5 or 6 years, the trend in enrollment that we see, how it starts the year up high and decreases throughout the year, we're able to get a pretty accurate look on that. And so that's where that number comes from. What typically happens though is we end up in a situation where we might end up with more kids than that 3550. And now we're going, now we've got to find another teacher. So we've always been very conservative how we budget based on that attendance, because there's so many variables that are there. And the last thing we want to do is be overstaffed when we can control that portion of it. But we also don't want to start the year going, great, we need 3 more teachers at, you know, North Elementary because we didn't anticipate this increase of 100 kids.
But James, how come it's not figured at enrollment versus attendance?
That is a state issue.
They changed it.
So
Yeah.
They used to though, right?
So
During COVID.
pre-COVID, it was ADA. During COVID, they went with enrollment, which increased funding. So basically, everybody's ADA was 100% because they funded you based on your actual enrollment of kids. And so after COVID, we thought we were going to stay with that direction. That was a push that came from the State Department of Ed too, was to maintain that funding. Because again, whether that kid's there for one day or all days, we have to plan for that kid being there. And so the legislature decided that they didn't agree with that and went back to the old model of ADA, which negatively impacts all the districts.
And the ADA is only a snapshot at the beginning.
Yeah.
November.
First, yeah, through November. Of the beginning of what you have. It's not what you have for the whole year, and we don't get to pick and choose the days or the weeks that we give the state. They take it for that time period. And if it's great, we're good. If it sucks, then our budget gets tanked.
So what if I understand this, you're saying that after November, whatever it was first,
After the state's cutoff date,
if your attendance changes, your income doesn't.
Right, your remaining
funding,
payments
yeah.
are based on that,
Sorry.
that window, yeah.
I look at money coming in as income, sorry. So your, so if your attendance goes up, we have,
so if January with the new semester, we all of a sudden have 200 new students, we don't get any more money for that.
but you still have to go to the 1.1. And that means you're gonna hire some more people?
No,
You're-
you would. I can tell you that situations never occurred where we've had an increase. Typically, enrollment is at its highest the first week of September. And then over the course of the remainder of the year, you lose kids throughout that remainder of the year. So, like this, we're budgeting to start at 3,550. We could be down to 3,400 by the end of next year. You don't, looking at our enrollment over the last 20 years, there's never been an increase in the second half of the year from the first part of the year.
All right,
But in that situation, if it did, like, let's say we got this huge group in, you would have to hire additional staff that would have to come out of, fund balance or discretion.
so if we build another 1,000 homes out here, you're gonna,
Yeah,
but you're not gonna fill them all, and I mean,
yeah,
I'm asking questions not because I wanna know what's real or not real
Yeah.
to expect. Just so I can learn the system, the process.
and those homes, the factor you use now, when you factor in the new buildings, part of Idaho is 2.5 residents per house. So think of it as basically a half a kid for each new house that's built. So, the talk even of 1,000 new homes is not this huge influx, 250 kids at the most.
We count kids as 0.5s and we count instructors as 0.1.
0.1s.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
All right with me.
Or certified career ladder is now matched. Salary. I mean, no, I understand.
So that one right there is going to be what the state reimbursed us.
So the classification.
Yes.
Is what this is our district's classification.
Yes, that was basically agreed upon in, when we did the salary schedule meeting, in the basic committees to design that. The first part is the residency, then there's professional, and then on the state side, there's the professional, and there's the advanced professional. There's a lot of criteria that the teachers have to meet in order to move from professional to advanced professional. And then, That one right there is going to be ours, which is basically residency, going to be professional, then once they've had the, bachelor's plus 24, and the master's category.
And across the board, we're hired, we think. Higher than
Yes.
State
Yep.
certified career.
And John, that's pretty typical outside of really small districts, so that career ladder state one that Levi has on here on.
AJ,
Page 8, yeah. So again, that one is a distribution model. Most districts have additional cells above and beyond to this. Some have kind of kept the traditional model that you used to go like bachelor's plus 20, master's plus 20. When the career ladder came about, a lot of districts went to some form of that. And so, but there's very few that follow exactly the state career ladder and very few that pay exactly what the state reimburses. There are some, but you know, we base ours on trying to remain competitive with the area. Not just Treasure Valley, but Magic Valley, and we have a very competitive certified career ladder.
When you say higher, slightly lower.
I would say we are in the upper half. And if you look at our statewide, I mean, that would probably be the top. I'd say 15% on public student.
Is the purpose of being at that higher level to entice someone to come here?
Recruiting, but even more important, retention, like keeping our people. That's, you know, we know we're never gonna compete with the Boise School District, like their schedule, I think maxes out right now, right about $90,000. But they have a different way of funding, because they're considered one of the original charter districts in the state, so they can basically impose a tax on the community without a vote. And so, well, yeah, so that, and they'll tell you like they're in a unique position. And so what we try to do is be very competitive with like Napa, Caldwell, Twin Falls, Jerome, those areas. And really, I think I haven't looked this year, but I think the only ones that were above us were West Ada and Boise in the area.
That's what it was last time I looked too.
On page 12. The second sentence.
Yes. Being,
6.3.
Yes.
Over the allowance. So the allowance is what the state funds us for.
right, but we earned.
Yeah.
Based on the ADA formula, that's how many teachers we earned.
and again, it's based on that same formula, and I can tell you, like, I don't know if a district that runs.
So should be the adjusted staff allowance, that's what we get reimbursed for, that's what we currently the app, so I basically just subtract the two. And then same with the right turn there.
And again, there's very few districts that run just exactly staff and like that, you know, it's pretty unrealistic, especially your support staff, you know, you look and go, I can't imagine eliminating 25 classified staff in the district and thinking things are gonna function right. And so,
So that was my next question.
yeah,
Is that looking at statewide averages for districts? our
Yeah,
size,
very-
Is that,
yeah,
is that
and
normal? Is that?
I would say we're probably actually on the low end or on the. Again,
Below average?
yeah, I would say we're below, I know we're below average in the admin. And
We're below the allowance.
right. And we're in that being 12 over for our certified, we're below the average in this area as well. So that's one of the things that with districts that are having some issues right now is they staffed heavily with federal funds during COVID, where we were very restrictive on that. And so that's what you're seeing is districts values in a bind right now, having to eliminate those overages to get closer to the state average, that state allocation, but they still won't be at that number. You know, I look at that and go, I don't know how you can eliminate 12 teaching positions in our district and not have chaos as well. We have adjusted staffing each year. That's one of the things that we look at is, you know, we're going to budget on what our enrollment is doing. We're going to make staffing adjustments up or down that fit within that.
Forest monies, you say they went down again this year,
What's that?
forest monies?
Yeah, federal forest, yeah, it was 14% of what it was the previous year, so it went from, it was 280,000 to 40,000. Nope, that federal, so he was talking about on the next page right here.
Yeah.
He was talking about the federal forest right there.
But it's,
Yeah, so that right there, so. On the other page right there, these are all the special funds, whereas on the main page is going to be just a general fund. So that's just fund 100, the general fund right there. So the federal revenue is going to be the impact aid.
well, this is,
No.
okay, yeah, I guess it says that.
And then federal funds, right now, we've got our information this week on what our title funding, all of that's gonna remain flat, with the exception, I think, of migrant, which is going to be lower. Which that would probably say, I think so, so.
So, budget shortfall, this if not.
No, but those are all restricted funds that have a specific purpose.
Get money around.
Oh.
For example, Forest Service, what are those restricted for?
Basically, the board has restricted that to our technology program. So basically, you know, anytime you need Chromebooks or servers, that kind of stuff, well, generally what it's used for. It's telling me to read this.
Something we do, something we do.
Look at that.
I think it's easier for somebody to tell you.
Taking everybody's time.
It's job security for anybody, it's okay. I ask you questions that are right in front of me all the time. Some people that no longer exist. You just take them off for next year.
They're still open on the books, haven't deactivated those accounts yet. Which I heard since they were active on the general ledger, I just leave them on the sheet.
Bothered to add that the 2% for the salary increases and sales, at least for the first certificated is pending negotiation.
Correct.
Is the school district modernization funds, is that new one from the state? that-
Yes. Yep.
We're out at base. Yeah, so we're waiting on, we had to resubmit to Congressman Simpson's office. The funding was not included in the continuing resolution from March, so I resubmitted the grant for that. We have priority in that grant process since we approved last year. And so they will, when Congress meets again, hopefully this time it's not a continuing resolution, but it's an actual budget. And then if they make it through that, then it'll be part of the continuing budget. So best case scenario with that is we would know in August if that's there. More likely it'll be sometime in the fall. And then once that action occurs congressionally, then it's a couple months delayed until it's distributed. But you know, our contacts with the congressman's office are confident that it's gonna occur. And so we're gonna take them at their word with it. If it, for some reason, doesn't, then that's what we're gonna be looking at, eating a big chunk out of that fund balance to finish that project. So we're through the design phase. We've been approved for that. We got official approval on that, so we'll start getting reimbursed on our existing costs from design on that. And so once we have all the design and bid documents ready, then we move into the construction phase portion of the grant.
I will take a motion to adjourn.
Also moved. Second.
All in favor?
Right.
You guys like, I want to get out of here too. All right, going overseas. Thank you guys.